What's up, everybody? Welcome back to Binge Empire, Bingetown TV's fantasy and sci-fi feed. So we've got a huge episode today. I don't know if that's actually going to be a reference to how long it is because it's the beginning of the recording, so we'll see. But importance, excitement, just I'm sure depth of conversation. I mean, huge. I think can apply in a lot of ways because obviously we are here to cover episode 4 of the Wheel of Time season 3. The Road to the Spear. So this was the big one. Unbelievable episode. Before we get into it, though, obviously some things we need to establish. If you're joining us for the first time, my name is Kyle. I'll be the host, let's say. I'm a book reader, along with Luke is here joining me. Any Luke, if you're watching on YouTube, you see that. We're here to kind of provide some context, answer questions, and then also give our takes as book readers and what we're seeing. And then we are both joined by, we have Paul and Dave, aka Landson. Finally, his dad has gotten back into his good graces after he dropped the nickname the first 3 episodes. But they're going to provide the entertainment for us here. We're going to experience them experiencing RHUIDEAN for the first time and answer all of the questions that we can. Before we get into episode coverage, does anyone have anything they want to say before we dive on in?
Yeah. No, I mean, I feel like we can all give a quick take because we can't just jump in and just without talking about this because I'll start without having. So I'm the other book reader, and so I have background of just having gone through the books one time, and this was hands down the best episode of the entire series. I don't even see a possibility that it gets beat until we start getting into endgame stuff, just because if you're not on that same level right now because you haven't ever read the books, like we're going to contextualize a lot of things through our conversation here, but you got to understand the undertaking that they took to try and get this done in an hour in a believable and from my memory, pretty accurate way to explaining the entire history of the IEL. So this was always going to be something I was very nervous as a book reader to see how they were going to tackle it. And I just could not be happier. I think they handled the time jumping right. They did the cinematography in a way with the flashing in between Rand and Moraine and their visions in a masterful way. But this is almost an isolated episode that if you have some semblance of Wheel Time, you can really appreciate it. But I would think that this is probably the book readers around the internet's like favorite episode of the entire series as well, just because what they tried to do here, I think they picked a target and they nailed it, man. I have so many things to say about this. I'm extremely happy that they landed the ship, and I've seen it 2 times. I'll probably watch it again sometime soon. It was incredible. But new guys, what did you think?
Paul, you can go ahead.
I mean, just insane. I'm taking notes, and it's like a book over here, and like it's scrolling and scrolling and scrolling. Just like I wrote down everything and every word because it just felt so important. Like this whole episode was just like either nods to something that like we were hinted at before getting confirmed, or it's just giving little hints to what's to come. I mean, that's the whole idea of kind of Moraine's journey, I guess. But then you get the fact that we get all the past, or not all the past, a lot of the past explained, and all these potential futures, like I don't even know where to begin with Moraine, so I'm not even gonna bring that up. But it was a lot. It was a lot to digest, but it was incredible the whole time. Like Luke was saying, this was like my favorite episode pretty much so far. It just there's nowhere. So, well, a bunch of weird theories and stuff, I guess we'll kind of get into towards the end. And I imagine it's going to be difficult for us to ask questions because these are prophecies, I'm assuming, similar to Min. So they could mean other things. I don't know. We'll get into it. But yeah, like you said, Kyle, I expect this one might be a decent length here because decent conversation. We'll see.
And to get the final thoughts from me as another non-book reader, I thought this was definitely an all-timer episode. I won't say it was my favorite of the series. I think this episode will definitely benefit more when the series ends. I think I'll be able to look back on this episode with more appreciation. But right now, it's certainly still an incredible episode. I mean, it's hard to not reiterate what you guys have already said. But yeah, the spins of the wheel through Moraine's eyes was incredible. Learning the connections between the Aiel and the Way of the Leaf was a payoff I wasn't expecting, and that lore of it all was so fascinating to me, and the connection that they have. I was really not expecting any of that. I will be honest, the first time watching was really tough to follow and understand what was going on as it was being presented to us. We get one flashback and I have so many questions on that flashback, and then we're immediately dropped into another flashback, and I'm still trying to process what just happened on screen. But I will say, after a second watch, I'm feeling much more confident about most of the events that we saw and that occurred on screen. Still, I have to say again that this was still an all-timer of an episode. I mean, that's definitely hard to argue against.
That was a nice advertisement for the utility of the podcast, Dave. So we'll go through all of the visions. You guys can ask all of your questions and we'll try to answer them as much as we can. And then naturally, Luke and I aren't superhuman. We're not encyclopedias of the series, although you can see all of the books above my shoulder there. So that's a great segue or plug for me to just say that if you're listening, if you're watching, and we get something wrong or you want to add to the conversation, you are more than welcome. So the comment section on YouTube, you can join our Discord. The link will be in the episode description. Or if you want to tweet at us, DM us. We're probably maybe slowish to answer DMs and Twitter things, but we can try to get to all that stuff as well. And also want to give a shout out based off of that to everyone that's already done that so far. I think the reception to the first 3 episodes, specifically via YouTube, has been awesome. There's been so many comments, so many things that have added on to my perspective of the first 3 episodes. I enjoyed them. I enjoy some things more now. And it's just all that stuff is just so great to see. It's so great to be back in the community of Wheel of Time. It's been very fun to read everyone's comments and reactions to things. And lastly, before I get in here, a little housekeeping, because I know our boy Jimmy might get a little mad at me if I don't say this, but if you are liking the content, if you're enjoying it, you're getting to the point where you would like to comment and you want to interact with us, the best way to support us is just going to be giving us a 5-star rating on whatever you're listening on, or a like on YouTube. You also can wait to see how this episode goes. Maybe you're joining for the first time because this episode, like Dave said, was such a mindfuck, and you're like, holy crap, I need some supplementary content to enjoy. Wait till the end of the episode. If you liked it, give us a 5-star review. That's the best way to let us know that you did enjoy it. If you hated it, keep it to yourself, because we are sensitive. I forgot to mention at the top, comment, but only nice things, because we're sensitive and not in the public eye often. Okay, so we'll start here. A little warm up. We have a handfuls of warm up scenes before we get into the nitty gritty of everything we saw within RHUIDEAN. So this kind of first groups of scenes, we'll talk about them probably individually because they don't relate exactly so, but we'll try to move through them. So the first one I have here is just Lan and Rand having this little training scene. This is just a nice way to showcase that their relationship is really developing. I have one kind of comment to make here, but I'll let others take the floor first.
Oh, let me get in here, because let's just say I was not entirely in a sober headspace when we started this episode, and this interaction was getting me so emotional. I was just so gushing over both these characters. I was sitting there just vocally saying, I love Rand, I love Lan, just over and over again. This relationship means everything to me. I love the mentor-mentee relationship that we're developing here, or have established already. And I was just smiling nonstop while these two were talking. I mean, the whole conversation probably just went over my head, because I just seeing Rand happy and Lan happy, it was awesome. It warmed my heart.
Yeah, it's just great seeing him working with the sword. It seems like more they were kind of like help out rather than training, but it's cool watching them go through their forms, kind of like the other warder. What was it? Maxim did it with Lan. I think that might have been all the way back season 1, but it's just watching them do the daily routine. It just reinforces why they're so strong, and the fact that Rand is hopping in on the training, incredible. Their conversation right here meant so much more on the rewatch. Like the first time, I'm like, I don't really understand what's going on. He's talking about the sheep, and how I may like be one of them, but I'll never actually be one of them, and talking about the IEL, and you're kind of confused. And then you watch this episode and your mind's blown. And then you go back and you're like, holy shit, man, just you wait, Rand. You'll find out in a second.
And it's also cool seeing him do this warder training when one of the spins, hint, hint, is Ren being Moraine's warder. So, could still be heading down that path potentially.
I don't have much to add, but can't walk away from the scene without at least shouting out their attention to detail when referring back to the books here, where Rand talks about something that is always mentioned in the books whenever he's in a stressful situation, which is something that his dad taught him, which is that the flame or the void in his head that he puts everything in to calm himself. So that was a shout out to the book readers. I'm happy they did that. And then also, Paul, I love that you brought that up, because for a show that's so condensed and moving as fast as we are and how much we have to cover, Rand started this series as a sheep herder. He can't just be good with the sword. So we need these little moments showing that little bit of development, even if it's 30 seconds of the episode. So I like that they focus on that, because you can see he's starting to get a little better. He's starting to get more comfortable. And anytime you get Lan and Rand together, it's just awesome in the books, because like you said, Dave, they have such a good mentor-mentee relationship, and it's just so much better, which is why you would love the books. But anyway, that's all I got to say about this scene.
Yeah, we're of a similar mind, Luke, because my comment was going to be on the flame, and I'll just add that those with good memories, maybe to season 1, might remember that Rand uses the flame in his archery training at the end of season 1, when he's like thinking back about his life and everything that's happened. When he realizes that he's the Dragon Reborn, they give good visualizations of the flame. Then I'm glad that it's back. I think this might be the first time really that they've talked about it since that point in the show. So Flameheads, we're back. Okay. The next one here is a conversation. Oh, I guess Moraine and Egwene are kind of involved in that. The big point there is that Moraine just has her eye on Rand, and she's always looking out for him. We'll get to that in a little bit later. So this one scene we'll talk about first, though, is going to be Moraine and Egwene have a conversation with the Wise Ones. We really learn more about the Aiel culture, I think, more than anything in this scene, but we do get the slip up from Paul's LVP from last episode, and that Moraine is slated to also go to RHUIDEAN.
I have in my notes, LVP at it again, just being the worst. She was saying like, yeah, if he didn't come here, you would die. If you didn't come here, you would die. If you don't go through the RHUIDEAN and Bear immediately, it's like, yo, you're oversharing. You went one too far. And it leads into a cool conversation later on when Moraine finally does ask the question to go into the Meridian. It's kind of like the Matrix. Well, we'll get into it later. But yeah, this, for being a wise one, you'd think she'd be wiser with manners and stuff like that.
Well, Moraine got her back here, right? When she says, well, you're pretty good at answering things that we don't care about.
Loved it. Quote of the episode.
That was referring to what Kyle mentioned. We, as part of the culture, Gai Shen, I think is what they're called. From my understanding and remembrance of it, it's just their honor-bound indentured servants is how I have them in my head. Right,
Essentially, yeah. So we learned in season 2 when we first meet Avienda. I don't know how much it gets referenced so far in season 3 of the concept of Ji-To. So when you have toe to someone, you're kind of honor-bound to follow them, to kind of listen to them until you fulfill that obligation. So actually, the reason why Bane and Chiad are in the Two Rivers is because Chiad has toe to Loyal, because Loyal saved her from the axe in episode 1. So that's why they follow them to the Two Rivers, because they have an obligation there. Gai Shen takes that, I think, to a higher level. It's usually based on like enemies in like a war. So if you, I want to say that there's multiple ways to do Gai Shen. I think the one way that they mention here is that it's essentially being defeated without getting like a touch in on someone else. So like if you just basically defeat someone, then like they become Gai Shen, and it's for a year and a day. So you're just Gai Shen for a year and a day. You wear white. You can't touch any weapons. You are just an indentured servant, like Luke said. But then after your year and a day, you're free to go. You can join the enemy side again, essentially. So that's just
weird,
highlighting this honor-bound culture that the Aiel are engaging in.
Mm-hmm.
And obviously, Egwene was the one that had problems with it, coming from her experience in season 2. But this seems to be more cultural rather than just pure enslavement of others.
Yeah.
Egwene's
Egwene's just a wetlander. Don't listen to her.
Yeah, she's a wetlander.
That is exactly what she is. Okay, so the next thing we have here is it's the aftermath of another Rand and Lan training session, and it spills over into the camps because, much to Avienda's chagrin, they're carrying swords near RHUIDEAN. At the moment, we're like, okay, chill out. But we can start to realize, and now that we've seen all the visions about the importance of that in general, but a fight breaks out that is quite curious. I still, after 2 watches, don't entirely know how I feel about this scene, but I'm sure maybe Dave, as Lan's son, your boy was showing off the moves at least.
Yeah, no, I actually really like this scene. Just the power scaling kind of dynamic of, who is stronger, Lan, Avienda. I think Luke immediately as we were getting to this fight asked me, who do you think's going to win? And I have to side with my boy Lan. The confidence was there. I just trust his abilities, and I consider it a W for him, even though it ended in probably what was a draw. But he disarmed her. I thought it was a cool fight scene, and allows Lan to gain respect as a sword user within the Aiel people, as just like a fighter in general. So I think he garnered some respect there a little bit, I'd like to think. I thought this was a cool scene, personally.
I liked Rand's line to Avienda beforehand, where he's like, "Am I Aiel or not? You can't seem to decide," because she totally just like will point out a trait that he has, and she's like, "Oh, disgraceful." But then she's like, "Come on, dude, you gotta I gotta follow you, and you gotta fulfill your destiny because you're the chosen one." And it's like, if I'm Rand, I totally get I understand his frustration at least, like, and kind of shine through episode 1 this season where he's like, "Yo, stop following me around" and all that other stuff. But it's just constant friction between these two. So
Get used to that dynamic.
yeah, I figured.
Just the ideal way.
Yeah. Something, and I was gushing about this because it felt like a step up in quality in just this whole season 3. But like during this fight scene, I don't know if it was on purpose or not, but like they're clashing, their weapons are hitting and nothing's popping off, whatever. And then they fall to the ground, and then their weapons fall in the sand. And then next big clash, the next cut scene, like dust pops off all their weapons. And it's just like, I don't know if that was by chance, but if that was like on purpose and they're paying attention to those details, that's just incredible. And that's how I imagined it. That's how I liked it. I don't know if it was put in afterwards or what was CGI, but it looked amazing. And it just made me fall in love with the little bout that they had. And then the last thing I had was just LVP coming in and telling Avienda to stop this foolishness. More LVP things.
So I don't know what you're about
Paul's
to say.
headed for the end of LVP again this episode.
He's also picking last again, as we always decided for this season.
I'll sneak in.
But Kyle, I don't know what you're gonna say about like why you didn't like it. Maybe it's because it wasn't a definitive crushing by Lan, and that could be argued that it was more just because of sparring and everything. But in my opinion, I think Lan was definitely gonna win that fight if it just kept going, just even based on what we got. But in terms of like when the wise ones come over and then they just halt Avienda from doing what she's doing and they tell her duties, that is another magnifying glass on the culture at how she wants to push back, but she can't. She literally drops her whole entire lifestyle of being a maiden of the spear and just has her spears broken right in front of her. Like that just should speak to you at how important the wise one's words are in this culture. Cause she drops what she's doing, takes all of the armor off and just starts sprinting away. And to me, that was like a really well done 20 seconds just to really drive home. Like even the people like Avienda, who their calling is to use the spear and she takes so much pride in it, will do whatever the higher ups do.
How in God's name did Bear break all 3 of those spears over her thigh and not hurt herself? That was what I took away from all of this. I was like, you are one strong individual. It was just nuts.
She used to be a maiden of the spear. I think she mentioned it here too, that she also fought her destiny. So she knows her way around them. She probably maybe knows the weak spots. We'll say that. Put a little respect on Bear's name. Not that you weren't. I'm saying to everyone out there, and that's what the show was kind of telling you what to do.
And in a serious note from this scene, just her sadness and like just you could see her being destroyed, giving up her spears and breaking her spears and everything like that. So just put more weight on it. Just like you said, so cool. Such a fascinating part of them.
And
Can
Rand
I
was
prompt
looking...
a board guest here? Kyle, is that allowed?
I guess we'll have to see.
All right. I just want both you guys to guess now of what you think the future of Avienda is. Is she going to take the spears back? Is she done fighting like that for the rest of her, life in this show? Like, what do you guys think is going to be the result of her having her spears broken?
Well, I have her on death's door, do I not? At some point in the series.
You do.
Not that changes anything, but I think she'll end up going back to the spear, just because. I mean, the big theme of this episode was Oathbreaker and people who aren't true to their word, I guess, in a lot of ways. And this could kind of tie into that theme. So that's really the only reasoning I have for choosing that, but I'll say she's going to go back.
I'll go with the opposite and go with the cycle theme and another turn of the wheel, basically. And so Avienda will take Bear's position as the wise one, just as Bear was a young maiden of the spear, same as Avienda, and they'll just, the cycle will continue.
I will also say she is higher chance for death on the battlefield, so that's probably another reason why I'm going with the spear side of things.
Now, when you say that, Paul, are you saying that Bear's going to die and Avienda will replace her? Is that what you mean by that?
Yes, I was alluding to it. I don't know if it'll be soon or it'll even be like an attack. It might just be natural causes. I don't know. But yeah, I figured Bear would be gone at one point.
I will say I was drawing comparisons a little bit to the Foundation for anyone who's seen it. I've only seen a few episodes of season 1, but how the rulers are in Foundation, there's like an older one, a middle-aged one, and a young one. And my mind kind of drew to that as in they're kind of maybe not needs to be 3 wise ones, but they're kind of pulling from each generation. I mean, we only saw 2 at least from this. I was going to say tribe, but it's clan from this clan. So we don't know if there are, how that dynamic works. But I was kind of thinking that if she did accept the role, which in this episode she does, she would fulfill that trifecta of, older generation, middle generation, and young generation.
Not ridiculous to say that. What in that moment just stopped you from saying clan instead of tribe?
I was going to say tribe, and then I remember our discussion last time, and that's the word I used.
Voices.
Yeah.
Is it Clash of Clans? Is that what you thought of?
Yeah. No, actually not at all.
Oh, come on. At least lie and don't embarrass me in front of 379 people that are going to watch this on YouTube. Okay. I don't want to, I guess, be a Debbie Downer, but the reason why this felt weird to me was that unless I completely forget, I just feel like this would never happen in the books. I feel like Lan would never, I don't want to say stoop to this level, but like engage in this type of tomfoolery, let's say. Avienda and Lan fighting feels like a very odd thing to occur. But it's nice, honestly, that you guys ended up enjoying it and also took some things away from it. Dave, I will say to your point about how an outcome is that like they will respect Lan maybe more after this. Something that the show hasn't really done a ton of, and it's kind of hard because there's a lot of things that they have to do, but they brought it up last episode, and I think we talked about it as well, with this title of On a Line that I think it's Melindra, the woman with the tattoo on her back, says to him. She calls him On a Line. She's kind of calling him. She's not necessarily taunting him, but talking about Malkier. So Lan is actually a very well-known figure in the Aiel. A lot of Aiel know about him. He has an insanely good reputation from the Aiel War that we know as the Blood Snow in those crazy cold opens with their fighting on the mountain in the snow. That war, Lan made a really big name for himself with the Aiel. At that point, they really respect him because of that. And they also know that he is like he's like the king of Malkier, this lost land. And On a Line in the old tongue means like a nation of one, or like a man who is his own nation. So they respect him that he's like carrying this banner of this battle against the shadow for his lost country. So I think they'll get into that a little more as we spend more time with the Aiel and Lan and things like that. But
that's my daddy, man. That was amazing.
Yeah, I mean
that was amazing info.
Yeah, that's like where his kind of character stands with the Aiel at this point. But I hope that they fleshed it out a little more because, like you're saying, it's just so badass and Lan's the man. So let's get more of that in there. There was something else I was going to say, but I don't remember. Oh, it was that I was kind of curious if Paul and Dave, you guys were caught off guard at like the suddenness in which the Avienda thing happens, and where like there wasn't any type of like lead up to it. It just kind of like occurs. And it's like, by the way, you've been running from us for too long. Like, you just got to go.
Yeah, I mean, it did throw me off guard, but I think, I mean, through the eyes of Rand, it kind of makes a little sense in the fact that Rand knows all too well about being forced to walk a path that you do not want. Yeah, I don't think there was any hints of Aviendha not being like a fighter in the future, so it took me by surprise. But I think it was an interesting wrench to make that I feel like, especially looking back now, that had to be done in order to, get these characters going a little bit.
Yeah, I just wish maybe they had like even like a throwaway line in like episode 1, or like when she's with Elaine or something that like hinted at that she's kind of like running away. Not necessarily running away, but there is something that's kind of waiting for her at the waist.
Those would have
I feel
been
like that was something they
too.
Yeah, when we first meet her in the books and they kind of hint at it a little bit that she is running away from something. She has a level of like reluctance about seeing the wise ones again, and I just wish there was a little bit of that. But again, very small nitpick. Obviously, one you can only have if you've read the books.
I was a little confused with it because usually I thought it was your choice to ask the question, which, Aviendha does, but Moraine also had a line where she was like, men wait outside before going into RHUIDEAN for like weeks beforehand because she's trying to get Rand to take his time. And meanwhile, these wise ones are just kind of shoving Aviendha in there. So it was a little weird, but
it's probably twofold. One of that fold is going to be the cultural thing where it's like that feels like classic Aiel, where like it's you ask, but like you're forced to ask, essentially. And then the second one being that she kind of ran away from it, so it was like, all right, like your time to think about it and prepare is over. Like, just get in there.
I guess, yeah, if it's been a while.
Yeah, that's my take on that. Okay, we can move into this last, let's say, conversation before we have like the true pregame morning of. We're riding up the ridge to get a view of RHUIDEAN. So this is just a very small conversation between Moraine and Rand, but I just think it does a great job of establishing like where they're at with each other before we have this completely life-changing, destiny-changing, fate-changing experience that they kind of share together in opposite ways. So I know, Luke, you'll probably have an opinion on this because of the Moraine-Rand relationship had such a big role in the books, but also curious, Dave and Paul, if you're kind of thinking almost like, do you kind of side maybe more with Rand here in that Moraine's overbearing and he shouldn't trust her as much? Or is it kind of more of a Moraine has a right to be frustrated of like, why is he acting like this?
I side with Rand in the sense that say it plain, like stop with your Aes Sedai games and tiptoeing around the truth and not actually saying, the answer that we want, which, in her defense, she does say, I will do nothing to hinder you from fulfilling your destiny. I've devoted my life to that, but I will not promise to watch while you lay your head on a chopping block. And she does say, I'll do nothing to hinder you. But then again, she never says like, I'll never stop you from like doing what you feel you need to do. So at the end, Rand even says, that's not enough. And I kind of get it. I know Moraine, like the whole line earlier about if only it were that easy to stop a pot from boiling. She is just the safety, like the abort switch for Rand if he goes nuclear, I assume. So I get that she is just worried 24/7, but I don't know. I can tell why the relationship is so sticky because you just neither can like fully trust each other.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I mean, I'm definitely more on the side of Rand, and that Moraine only really sees him as the dragon and doesn't see Rand. And I get she's trying to protect him. She lays it out plainly that, there have been plenty of, experienced Aiel people that have tried to go through and they clearly have not made it back. And she worries about him going through that challenge. But she also needs to have faith in Rand and what he wants to do. He seemed in his answers were always very confident in I'm going to do this. He never wavered from that determination. And I think that's where Moraine needs to do a better job of, okay, I understand that Rand understands that what he's about to go through, and I'll let him make that decision for him. And that's why I think the quote at the end of this is so hard in terms of when Rand says not good enough, Moraine. I honestly really like that line coming from Rand, especially that I'm more on Rand's sides, but I still will reiterate that Moraine makes a case that she is just trying to protect him, but it can be overbearing, especially when Rand wants and knows he needs to do something like this.
Yeah, they both make great points, but Team Rand till I die, and he definitely has the right to be frustrated with her. He's been like this since season 1. Their relationship has been growing, but it still has that at the center of it. They don't trust each other, but they know they need to work together. And it really goes well with paralleling it to all, or I guess juxtaposing it all the way with the end where he still won't leave the city without her, even though he doesn't trust her and thinks that she's just babysitting him and trying to control him into a certain path. I think it comes across so well because what you guys just said is my exact thoughts when I was reading the book about them. And I think if that's the case, it's a plus for the showrunners.
Yeah, he has a healthy suspicion of Aes Sedai.
Yeah.
Even before he find out he was the Dragonborn born, that was, I think, a big theme that they established in season 1, especially when it's him and Matt together. And that they're not really jazzed about the Aes Sedai in general. The Aes Sedai's reputation in the world is not fantastic, or at the very least, it's a lot about controlling and pulling strings and things like that. And then I think you add on the expectations that he feels upon himself, that it is understandable the way that he feels, especially like Paul, the quote you just read. There's some wiggle room in there where as long as she believes he's doing something that's not in line with the destiny, then she can do what she wants. That's obviously where the gray area is. It's where she thinks it's one thing and maybe he thinks it's another. But I will say for Moraine, I enjoy, maybe not the right word, but I like the exploration of her character in the sense that she's dedicated her entire life to this, but it's not something that she can do. You know, like she has given up everything to go on this path, but at the end of the day, it's not the path that she is going to walk. She has to help someone walk the path alongside her. And I can understand that would be incredibly frustrating, especially this knuckleheaded sheep herder from the Two Rivers, bumblefuck nowhere, who now read a couple pages in a book and maybe thinks he knows what he's talking about and what goes on in the world. So this is
Just so you
a
hate
dynamic.
Rand.
Nah, come on. We try to be fair. If you listen to our traders coverage on our Unreal Reality Television Show podcast, you know that I'm dubbed the man defender. But I think Moraine has a defense here that needs to be spoken. And I just think that the exploration of their relationship moving forward is going to be a big part of this show. So we'll see how after this episode, because we'll talk about the experience that they go through, how maybe that might result in an immediate change for the better or the worse. Okay. So now we have kind of a pregame. I'm going to take this all in one bucket. I think we do here. So we just have, they're kind of walking up to, I forget the name of the summit, the peak, whatever, that Avienda references when she goes on her nighttime jog to RHUIDEAN. But we have Rhuarc and Rand are kind of having a conversation. We run into the fabled Shido that we learned about. I believe it was in episode 3 when we have that group of murdered Tinkers. We understand why maybe we're suspecting them after we meet them here in this conversation. And then we have everyone kind of go their separate ways. But this conversation and confrontation, I think, tells us a lot. So there's some things to talk about here.
Mm-hmm.
The biggest quote that I have is the younger brother that's arguing that Rand shouldn't go in. Rhuidean?
Couladin.
What Couladin?
Oxymoron. He's not very cool.
Yes. He's very hot-headed, if anything.
Sure.
He's arguing that Rand isn't an Aiel, shouldn't be going through RHUIDEAN. Rand says, my mother was Aiel, and then we get this huge bomb drop that was, your father, yes, but your mother, ... of course, cut off. We're not supposed to find out. So what the fuck? I have no idea. I don't even know how to take it because I still believe that Rand's mother was Aiel because I think the prophecy, just needs him to be like 100% Aiel, not 50% Aiel. So, but I really have no idea how to break down that quote. It threw me off so much. And I think we even had to pause it like first time watching because I just needed to make sure that I heard that correctly, that it wasn't, yeah, we're confirming your mother was Aiel, but your father, blah, 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 blah. It was the other way around. And so now we have all these questions raised about his mother. I get that the father was an Aielman, fighter. She was too, I mean, obviously, but he killed Moraine's uncle. I don't know, man. I don't even know where to begin with the mother with this quote. It just threw me off so much.
Yeah, that's I mean, I guess we'll touch on it, or I'll touch. I don't really need to actually, because I don't really have anything to say. Just another mystery to look forward to, especially with what we see at the end. So, just something else to add onto the list to keep in the back of your mind. I hope the back of your mind is freaking huge because there's a million things. One cool, really cool scene when Rand is walking up and talking to Ruark and asking about the RHUIDEAN. He shows what the Chiefs get marked with, and I was like, dude, Rand's gonna have 2 of these freaking things, one on each arm. That's incredibly badass because you knew he was gonna do it.
I'm happy you brought that up because Kyle kind of slightly hinted at our general opinion of what Ruark is going to be in the last podcast, where he's just the homie. He's just awesome. So him talking with Rand here means a lot to book readers, and it's just cool that he gives him some information, but he will not tell him about the trials. Of course, that's like forbidden. He's got to experience that on his own. But this whole scene was good. I think I like the little tent that they have, because you got to keep remembering we're in the desert. They have a whole lifestyle built around this. They're near RHUIDEAN, but they're not actually there yet. And some other things that I saw that I pointed out or wrote down towards the end of the conversation after Rand immediately asked the question, which I thought was cool. He just cut through all the bullshit and it's like, can I go in? And he's granted leave, and then Egwene's reject it. But then, of course, Moraine, knowing what she knows, has to also go with him. And we're told right here, straight up in plain words by the wise ones, that the past is for Rand to learn and the future is for Moraine to learn. We can talk more about the specifics of what Moraine is actually learning here, but they were talking in metaphors almost, where she's going to be seeing possible spins of the wheels, and what that actually means, I think, will be more interesting to talk about when we talk about the spins. But this was all just set up, and it's just such a cool spot because it walks them right up to where all the weapons are, which I think is just a badass scenery. Seeing all the people that didn't come back from the trials and died over the years, that they're just the buildup. And we even see in one of the visions that coming up here in the future, the first time a weapon was put there as somebody went through the trials. So it's just a lot of cool backstory that on the second rewatch, you can appreciate 10 times more.
Wow. I feel really silly because I literally, in the flashback that we get, I'm like, where was the fence that they had? I just didn't put it, like, it's so stupid, but yeah, it didn't put it together. That's all the weapons.
No, this is why we're here. We want these reveals for you guys, because this is a lot to digest. Like, I'm going to get so much wrong, and Kyle, who's read the books more than me, is probably still going to get a couple things wrong here or there. So ask questions. If you think something's out of place, throw it out there. Somebody else is probably wondering the same thing.
Well, I had a question about when Moraine initially asked to enter RHUIDEAN. Like, the wise ones say, like, no, like, this isn't for you. You should not have been told, or something like that. They basically say, Bear says, if you ask, we will say no. And then Moraine, like, turns around, and then she's like, you know what, I'm going to ask anyway, and then fully ask the question. Was that like, and then the wise ones say yes.
That was to Egwene.
Yeah.
Oh, okay. That was to Egwene. I thought it was to Moraine.
No.
I thought they were testing her because of the knowledge that she knew she already went in it and all this other stuff. So that makes way more sense.
Yeah. Yeah. They reject Egwene outright. They even say that that it's Rand's path to walk, and like your paths do not align.
Gotcha.
Thought that was to Moraine. So definitely confused.
I just had a question on like the hierarchy, if you want to call it that, of the Aiel, because the Shido woman that was, speaking on behalf, saying she has a new husband and these new sons are the ones that are going through RHUIDEAN, or at least.
So the husband recently died, who was the clan chief. So in order to replace the clan chief,
so she didn't get remarried.
You need to go through the trials.
Okay, yeah. She just is a widow or whatever. But anyway, we know that she is not a wise one, and that she kind of has to let the wise ones take control of the situation here, and she kind of has to just back down. We don't know her role, I guess, and I was just surprised because I kind of was expecting her to be a wise one of the Shido clan, essentially.
Yeah, that's honestly a great interpretation there, Dave, because they're Bear and Mullane, who is Paul's LVP, and I might be mispronouncing that. They kind of Bear essentially says that we are two that can say yes. So they have two wise ones there that can answer. Savannah is the Shido woman that's there. She's not involved because she is not a wise one. So she's not counted in that number of two. They don't really tell you too much about her beyond obviously she has a level of confidence. Maybe she has a hunger for power, you know, because she wants to be married to the next chief and those things. But that is kind of it. I thought her costuming looked great. Her voice is great. It was all good. Speaking of the costuming too, I thought it was so funny. And I don't recall necessarily from the books, but it feels like it can't be this way in the books because they all kind of, the Iodas wear the terrain like colors, but I just love how they're all in black. So it's like, okay, these are the bad guys.
Yeah.
They're just had to, that's just like that visual cue of like, maybe don't like their trust these guys.
It's like The Witcher with the Nilfgaardians, just make them look bad.
And then Couladin obviously opens his mouth and leaves no doubt to that. I think one of my favorite parts of this episode, maybe underrated, but Bear's response to Couladin is so unbelievably wise one, where he's like, he's trying to talk and is like, he's asking like a girl, and she says, "Do you want to put on a dress? Because this is wise one shit." And like, it's either you put on a dress or you shut the fuck up, basically. And it's just such a wise one way to address that situation and to reprimand him. And I just thought it was so perfect. But the second part of that is, are we surprised at all that the wise ones can channel?
Yes.
No.
I was a little
wasn't
confused
really.
about that because I knew that they had some latent ability because of like the dream walking and everything like that. But when she pulled out like a weave, it didn't exactly look the same though. I don't know if it was similar or it wasn't the same. Kyle is shaking your head there.
It's going to be
No,
different.
I'm saying, yeah, that it was important to notice that it was different.
Okay,
so it's, you know,
cool.
the difference between you're kind of trained in a tower built around it versus within the IO culture, they're not sending, you know, girls to the White Tower to learn how to channel. So they're kind of doing it on their own.
I always relate it back to like The Witcher. I feel like where Witchers can use like signs, which is like the basic, most simple form of magic, where it's not even almost the same thing as, you know, the mages can use. So I kind of want to look at it the same, but they're both pulling on the same. Is that what you said, Kyle? Or we don't
Correct.
know yet?
Yeah. They're using the one power. It's just the difference between, you know, being educated in school for your whole life on how to use it versus the way that the IEL have learned to use it on their own and obviously pass those lessons on from generation is going to be different than the more formal schooling.
I didn't know if we were going to like just put it out there because now that we can talk about it a tiny bit, but I just want to say my headcanon is how the wise one was able to break Avienda's spears. There's some, you know, weaves in there when she snapped those spears. Maybe, I don't know.
There you go.
A reinforced femur, a little reinforcement on the femur.
Why not?
That would go a long way, honestly, because I think my femur would break that way. Okay, so I think I just have a couple of things I want to mention before we really get into them going into RHUIDEAN. So I have this one quote that I love, that it's about the danger of knowing the future. And as I was reading about all this stuff before we got on, and someone mentioned that it's kind of a cool maybe callback or reference to the issue of prescience that is explored a lot in the Dune franchise. But essentially, those who move with too much knowledge of the future find disaster, whether from complacency in what they think must come or in the effort to change it. And that's just, I think, a really cool way to look at the ability to see the future, and also maybe the purpose of these rings, these Terangrial, showing Moraine 1,000 turns of the wheel. Through this, you will know without doubt some things that must be for you and some that must not. So it's giving you just this array of options. It's not giving you a specific charted path, which is important. Okay. And we have this scene where they're kind of telling them they had to lose all of their weapons. And I only call this out to mention that Moraine drops like 15 pounds worth of knives in the sand. And even Rand was like, oh, okay, I didn't realize we were rolling like that, but noted for the future.
It's funny. It's funny that she carries daggers because I always think of daggers as just tiny swords, essentially. So it's just ironic that would be a workaround to the no swords oath.
Well, Moraine she doesn't care about it. She's not an Aiel. She doesn't care about the no swords oath.
Oh, I thought that was that not an Aes Sedai thing? What is the
No, the Aes Sedai can. I mean,
got
if they really wanted
no,
to,
it's not no weapons in general. It's no weapons.
Yeah.
That's what it was.
They
Okay.
can't make weapons the one
weapons.
power, and they can't use the one power to harm others unless in the defense of their life or their warder.
Got it.
All right. A little bit of 3-0s recap. That's always nice to throw those in there unexpectedly. So we have this pre-columns and pre-rings situation where Rand and Moraine walk into RHUIDEAN. Moraine makes that side comment about how the fog feels very one powerish. We learn that there's a reason for it because it is one powerish. But they have this encounter at the Avendasora, which is kind of the tree of life. And they have this conversation that Dave kind of addressed a little bit earlier, talking about Rand's mom and dad. But just curious if there was anything else we wanted to mention about this fateful connection essentially between Moraine and Rand. And we learn about the reason why Rand's dad and mom were on the slopes of that mountain 20 years ago.
I mean, it was incredible. It was like the first mind shatter, really, of the episode, because she tells this whole backstory, and then she relates it as soon as she says Dragon Mount, and then Rand's like, "Oh shit, that makes so much sense." And then it makes like you were saying, they were, if you want to say destined, but like their connection goes back so far, and just adds to their complicated relationship that they already have. I feel like this scene had a lot to do with Rand waiting at the end for Moraine to be completed. Maybe he would have done it anyway. I don't know. But quick question. Was it weird that they were like talking in here? Because I thought the wise ones had a line where they were like, RHUIDEAN belongs to the dead, and you won't speak to another living until you exit the RHUIDEAN, or something like that.
I think they said they won't speak to the living until they get back, implying that, like, you're going in together. It's fine. Not really like a lore rule break, I don't think.
Yeah. No, I mean, I think that was more, maybe it's not usually in the guidebook of like what to say when two people go in at once together unexpectedly. Maybe is my take there. That experience has been passed down through the years, let's say.
I just wanted to clarify something that I know Dave and I almost could see the confusion in Dave's speaking when we were talking about this scene when we watch it for the first time. But Moraine clarifies that her uncle was the one that cut down the tree from Kyrian to make the throne. But you need to know that just because her uncle did it, like, that tree was in Kyrian for a really long time. I don't know if they said the exact amount of years, but it wasn't like it got there and then Moraine's uncle just cut it down and made the throne. So like it was there for a decent amount of time. And Moraine's ancestors, or whoever the royalty for Kyrian were just like sheltering it almost.
Yeah, she mentions that it had been given to her ancestors, to Kyrian, in the past to repay an older debt. That debt is actually one of the visions from the book. They don't show it to us. It's one of the visions they skip in the show.
Was just going to ask if that was something that we got addressed, because I didn't remember learning about what this older debt was and why they received the tree.
Essentially, it's that the Aiel, so after they do the killing for the first time and they kind of split away from what we kind of are assuming are Tinker-ish Aiel, then a group of those people are given water by people near Kyrian. Rand just sees that happening, and then at that point they're like, okay, the Aiel that get the water are like, you guys, we'll remember this. So then they give them the tree, and that was kind of their like great pact over time. And then Moraine's uncle cuts the tree down, breaks the pact, and then the Aiel pour over the spine of the world to start the Aiel War 20 years ago. I will say too, just to call back to season 2, so when we met Moraine's sister and her, I almost said nephew. I actually almost said nuncle, but her nephew, Barthanes. They mentioned how the family was falling on like crazy hard times and they had to drag the house out of the gutter. Well, the reason why is because their uncle threw pretty much the entire world into chaos by doing this and started this crazy war that killed thousands of people. So they said, you know what? Let's get those guys away from power.
Mm-hmm.
All right. Are we ready?
Ready.
Yeah, let's do it.
All right, so we have the glass columns here. And now, this is our disclaimer at the start of this. This show obviously moves from the closest ancestor to Rand and moves farther back into time. So you're learning the steps of what happened backwards. And we're thinking that the easiest way for us to talk about this, to understand the progression of events, to answer questions, and to kind of lead into each other is that we're going to do the opposite. Where we're going to start at the furthest one all the way in the back and then move our way chronologically through history so that it's easier for us to understand the path of what's happened over time. Hopefully it goes well. I can't imagine why it wouldn't. And if it goes wrong, just blame Luke and I because or the wheel. Yeah, blame the wheel. You know what? I love that. Blame the wheel because I was feeling a rippling and it was like, do this. Okay. Yeah. So we're going to start at what was the sixth vision. So we have a far along ancestor of Rand. Just going to get this comment out of the way. He looks fantastic. I love Yosha was unbelievable in this episode, playing all these different versions of his ancestors. And I think this guy specifically, his name is Charn, was beautiful. The way his eyes are all big, he seems so genuinely happy and stuff. But this vision essentially shows us that Lanfear, who was known as Mirin Sedai at the time, this is when the Dark One is pretty much given free reign of the world. She drills a hole in the pattern, which opens up what's called the Bore, which allows the Dark One to then influence the world. So that's what we're seeing here in this vision. There's some more we can say, but just want to give the space for takes and discussion.
And then wait, let's also try and give a rough estimation of when this is, because the reason I'm saying that is what? What's
I'm just
let me just
go to the let me just go to the 35,000 tabs I have. Let me find it. You're good. You can talk and then I'll research in the background. I have a timeline.
The important piece of lore that we get here is that Lanfear mentions Lews Therin and saying that just that he's alive and that he's around. That's just really important because we know that after Lews Therin's gone is the breaking of the world and like everything kind of started reverting back to the past and eventually leads to where we are now. But this is the farthest back in time that we can possibly get. Lanfear looks amazing as she always freaking does. And the only sign of crazy technology we have right now is this insane magic ball that they're in. It's like a spaceship as they're looking down at the other Aiel farming and singing the song.
This was amazing. I mean, I honestly didn't know what the rippling was. We could kind of, I assume, guess that it was something related to the Dark One just because of how the events were presented to us. The flashback before this one already implies that the Dark One has been around and that they have already sealed him away. This was just crazy. I mean, it was so cool to see Lanfear. I think this was, I'm not sure if it's confirmed, but if I were to guess, it was around like 3,000-ish years ago.
A little more, but yeah.
A little more, yeah. And my biggest takeaway is that Mirin Sedai references the true power and not the one power. Didn't know if that's just a normal alias, if we're tapping into something that's completely different here. It was definitely something that caught me off guard at the time. I don't know how important that'll be, but
to so cool. Reference the board. So season 2, there was a discussion about something similar to this, and we have you two on kind of opposite sides of it. So Dave established that the Forsaken have access to a power that is not the one power.
Okay.
While Paul was on the side of the Forsaken have access to forbidden techniques, but they still use the one power. And now this is neither confirmation nor, I would say, rebuttal.
I'm doubling down. I double down on that.
But it's, I guess, but it is restarting that conversation of there is something out there that is not the one power. Wow. I mean, or at least they thought there was, because she thinks, all right, let's go tap this unlimited energy source. But the outcome is the worst possible outcome in the world, and that she opens up the world essentially to the influence of the Dark One.
And she says true power, soon everyone will have it's called the true power. Soon everyone, not just Lews Therin and the Aes Sedai, will have access to it. I'm not sure if I'm remembering those words exactly. So, but if I were to kind of piece that together, it sounds like Lews Therin and the Aes Sedai at the time have access to the true power. And maybe it's as simple as something as no.
Incorrect. Well, at this
Okay.
time, they're only using the one power. They're using the Sidar, the women
Okay.
half, the Sidene, the males half, and Lanfear's kind of goal here is that why don't we tap into a power that's greater than the one power, and we can all use it together, the same power. So there's a little bit of restrictions involved when the power split gendered in that way. So they're kind of searching for this ultimate level of power that even people that can't touch Sidar and Sidene, so like the Aiel that are here, anyone can use it. That would be like the dream utopia that she was shooting for.
Yeah.
Fair enough. Then that was amazing clarification. I'm all good. That was the true power was honestly really the only big comment that I had on this.
Love the little hair ponytail that he's got going on here.
Anakin?
Yeah, I was
Yeah,
gonna say it's
definitely.
like a Padawan
Padawan.
like tail from Star Wars. Definitely feels like,
Mhm.
and it continues on. I think the next / previous flashback that we got, his ancestor does have one. It's gray, but he does have a little ponytail too. So it just continues on, and then after that, it dies out. So it's almost like, okay, you can see the tradition die out. You can see the old tongue slowly die out. So it's just incredible. Also, speaking of dying out, season 1, we kept going. Do you know the song from the Tinkers? And I assume this was the song.
And
Lanfear. Oh,
it's a banger.
it's a banger. It's
Yeah,
catchy.
I would also be upset that we lost the song. I can see why they're wandering around searching for this song because I would also love to join in a couple drinks deep singing that, just hoeing my fields.
Yeah, definitely went platinum. I mean, everybody's singing it. He jumps in. And I feel like if Rand ever does find another band of Tinkers again, they'll be like, "Do you know the song?" And he'll be like, start singing, just
Boy,
bust it
do
out.
I.
That'll be sweet. Yeah, you talking about this song? And then while he's in the field, the orb shatters and the sky seems to crack, and I assume that is the dark one kind of breaking free, but it kind of like looked like an eye too, and I didn't know if that was like the dark one can finally see again for the first time. Felt too much like Sauron though from Lord of the Rings, so I didn't want to like put too much into it being an eye or whatever, but just ridiculous stuff.
Yeah,
The Eye of Agamotto.
Yeah.
I don't have many more notes. You guys nailed it. Just keep the true power, one power verbiage in the back of your head. Keep growing that back of the head, Paul. And just, anytime we think of theories, keep that in mind. But I will say, Kyle, that this version of Rand, for some reason, felt the most innocent. And it made me sad to see like misery happen to the Aiel people. He's like looking up with like doe eyes. He's all happy when he was talking to Lanfear. It was such a cool little scene. And this is like meta talk right here, but since this is the last vision, I think the cinematography is at its best in this exact scene when it's flashing back and forth to Rand in the modern day, and it's like doing the quick little, flashes. It's so freaking well done. I just remember watching this for the second time, just loving every single second of it. And yeah, man. So just think how far back this is, just how much has changed since then. We're basically in Game of Thrones times now, when before, and more specifically in the next vision we're going to get to, we were in futuristic times. And it's just crazy how the breaking of the world and setting the Dark One free does that. So
it's even more tragic because this version of Rand didn't even seem like he wanted access to this power. He's like, doing the work by hand kind of has some self-gratification to it. I don't even know if we need this. And here Lanfear or Mirren goes and just does it anyway and fucks everything up.
I'm glad you called that out because I also enjoyed that part of it. And Luke as well, the cinematography. I think the sound design this whole episode was so good. I don't want to this is probably a very casual cinematography sound take, but it literally reminded me of Dune. It just like the robotic and just like the scale of the sounds, it just all felt like they were just nailing it and just hitting it out of the park, and it was so enjoyable to listen to and to watch at the same time. And I will say that just I guess to provide a little more potential book context, and that this one was really good. It's not exactly word for word, but it's like that big sphere. I don't even remember imagining it that way almost in the book. So like it came to life so well in the show. This honestly gave me a better understanding almost of the vision in the book, and that's
Oh yeah.
really what you're hoping for in the show adaptation. But the one thing I will say is, and I think we talked about this season 1 too, when we get that first ever look at like the old city when it was back in the day, old, and it was like so futuristic. And that in the books, in this vision, they talk about the Joe cars, how they're driving around all these like Joe cars that are flying cars, and it would have been kind of cool to see a
See
Joe
one,
car,
yeah.
but there was enough budget being spent on other things that I won't be upset about it. Okay, so that'll now move us. So that was the last vision. That was Charn, our farm homeboy. So now we're going to move into this 5th vision, which is Jonai. So Jonai is this very clean-cut, handsome Rand. He probably felt great to not have to put on all the prosthetics and all that crazy stuff. But so he is a member of, at this point, it's called the Dashine Aiel. So these are basically OG Way of the Leaf people. This is the origins of the Aiel. They're called the Dashine, and he is basically getting this mission from Latra Sedai, is what I'm going to call her. She has 3 names, but we'll just say Latra, who we also met in season 1. We'll talk more about that. But this is where we basically learn that the Aes Sedai entrusted cuttings of the Avendosora tree and this very powerful Sa Angreal, the Sakarnan, to the Aiel people. And it's like, okay, get on your wagons and take all of these artifacts and things to safety.
Yeah. So when we first got introduced to this flashback, Jonai, is that what you said his name was?
Correct.
He turns around and looks at the sky and sees like a darkness coming in. So I want to say like Luce isn't here anymore, because then they also go on to, when she's speaking, she's saying, you know, there are still some brothers that survived, but some are ripe with madness. So I think I want to say like this is the beginning of the madness of like affecting the male channelers.
The taint.
The taint. It sounds so funny every time. I like when it's like the taint looks so good around Rand as he's casting, but I mean it does look really good.
Yeah, well, that's right on. They're basically explaining here that this is after Luce Theron and the 100 Companions tried to seal the Dark One in Shaiol Ghul. So the Dark One's taint has officially hit the male half of the power. The men that can channel are actively going mad in the background. So when they pull away this scene, you see all like the volcanoes are like shooting in the air and creating also that black sky. Like it's just the world is thrown into chaos. The men are actively starting what's called in the history the breaking of the world.
Mm-hmm.
So this is their effort to try to preserve as much as they possibly can. They're preserving things as well, and they're also getting them away from the men that can channel. So we do get here that the female Aes Sedai, they hid Kalendor in what she says Kalendor is hidden in a fortress that cannot be breached, which, if we're paying attention, we know is the Stone of Tyr. So the Stone of Tyr was built at this point all the way in the past, and the female Aes Sedai hid Kalendor in the Stone of Tyr so that these crazy mofos, all the men channelers, can't touch it.
And Paul, you nailed the idea that this Sa Angreal is just the female pair to the male version being Kalendor, which it's new. So I think it's why it confused the hell out of me in the show. And I don't even mind this change. I think it'll work in the long run if they stick to the bit. But in terms of just like the breaking of the world, this is one of the coolest ideas to me as you're reading the books. Just how we really go from that futuristic city to what we're in now. And you can even see it in the way that the Aiel have these caravans that are futuristic, right? Like they look decked out compared to what we're working with the Tinkers in the modern day. So it's cool to see the technology. I totally went over my head that the volcanoes were being caused by the men freaking out.
I thought this was definitely one of my favorite flashbacks. I noticed, I didn't realize that they were volcanoes though. I saw them as like light beams going up as if someone was like kind of emitting power. And at first I kind of was thinking that, oh, maybe it's just them actually sealing the Dark One, but the conversations kind of implied that had already happened. just love this, and I love that Paul got that right in terms of that helped me with the clarification of Kalendor and this new Sangreal that we're being introduced to, and why Lanfear would know about it as well, because they mentioned Lanfear here, one of our former sisters, Miriam, who now goes by Lanfear, and so it makes sense that Lanfear in our present knows about the Sangreal and believes it to be true. It's just a one big just connection episode, and it's just so satisfying to see everything get put into place so perfectly. And I just thought that the CGI here and the last flashback that we just discussed was 10 out of 10. It just looks so good.
Okay, moment of honesty. I just kind of made up that they were volcanoes. That's what I thought they were. I guess they could also be things of light. They just looked quite volcano-ish to me. And we know that the breaking of the world
coming from the ground up, definitely.
And we know as book readers that the breaking of the world is kind of described as this event that like literally changes the face of the planet, and where like parts of the continent go under the ocean, other parts are raised up. They create mountain ranges and things like that. So that's why I said that. Okay. So we've moved from. We have Charn.
Did we not mention the question, the quote about the 10,000 saplings? Because I know we had that conversation in real life. Did we say that already?
I took it that each one of those caravans had a sapling. There were 10,000 caravans, 10,000 saplings, and it seems like only one, correct?
So is it coincidental that the one that survives is the one that has the Sangreal, or is like, because I don't remember as a book reader like how we got down from 10,000 to 1. Is that even something that we can talk about?
The wheel weaves as the wheel wills, baby.
That was something that came to my mind, though, is what happened to all these other caravans. And I'll put that question out into the.
My question was, how did Sangreal get from being in this guy's possession to being in what I assume is the only remaining sapling? But
that is divisions. We will talk a little bit more about that.
Okay.
But yeah, I think that most of the saplings don't survive. One ended up making it to Kyrian, was gifted to Kyrian at one point. There were some, I think, in other places, if I'm not totally off base here.
Wait, sorry.
That eventually were also cut down and removed. So yeah.
The sapling that we're referring to, so the one that survives these 10,000 caravans, that one goes to RHUIDEAN, and then the RHUIDEAN Tree of Life has another sapling essentially that is supposed to be given to. This is the one that's the debt
given to.
That's a fantastic question. I actually don't know the answer to that.
I feel like when Moraine is talking about the Tree of Life, she specifically says a sapling of this tree, the one we are looking at, was sent as a gift or a debt repayment. So I think only one, basically what I'm trying to say is one of the 10,000 makes it out. That tree has a sapling that is then brought back over the spine essentially to where I can't get the name.
Kyrian. That's totally how I took it, Dave, but it also could be that the other saplings somehow got out there.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah. Well, we might need a little help with that one. But
yeah.
So if we could move now to the next one. So we've started with the first one being Lanfear drills the board. The Dark One has influence over the world. The one we just talked about is we're moving on from that influence. We have the Forsaken are a thing. Luce Theron has sealed the Dark One. Men are going mad. The world is breaking. So now we're moving into what ends up being an older version of Jonai. So this is the same character. He's just mad old now. Gray hair. He's got children.
That was
he's got grandchildren.
The actor, right?
It's Rand. It's all Rand.
Yeah, my second watch through, I was looking at his like facial expressions and I was like, they're so similar to Rand, but I don't think it's him. And then I'm like pausing and I'm like looking at him like, I guess it has to make sense if we're seeing other Rands. Why would this one not just be the same one with just makeup on? I thought they did an incredible job with it.
Yes. So this is where we have Jonai. He's lost his super cool wagon. He's got this less cool wooden wagon. And essentially this vision is showing us that this is the origin of the Tuathuan, of the Tinkers, of the Lost Ones. So we have Jonai's kind of he's keeping that original oath to the Aes Sedai. He wants to shepherd the tree and the Sikarnan to RHUIDEAN eventually for safekeeping. And the Tinkers who end up breaking off here are like, we're done with that shit. Like, we don't really care so much about the Aes Sedai stuff. We just want to be safe. Like, they just killed and gentled the last male channeler, not challenger. And let's go find somewhere safe and just like survive. So that's kind of what's being shown here. And then we have the origins of the Tinkers.
My question is this the reason why the Aiel are known as Oathbreakers, or is it because of what happens in one of the upcoming flashbacks? Because
he doesn't break his oath right here.
Well, they don't, but the other people do. They're supposed to be Aiel too, technically, aren't they? And they leave, so they should be Oathbreakers. I'm just saying. I feel like there were 2 points at which they could have. I felt like there were 2 points at which they could have been considered Oathbreakers. Granted, both of them could make up the reason why they're just in general now called Oathbreakers, but go ahead.
My answer to that would be no, because I think that once this split happens, the people that leave Jonai and become the Tinkers, they don't become really known as Aiel.
Mm-hmm. Right.
So while I guess in some level too, the Tinkers are Oathbreakers. Mm-hmm. They don't really have that connection to the heritage in a way.
Okay. That was just a kind of question that I was just posing to myself after the second watch through. I did on my first time think it was the scene we're getting into here in a second. That was the reason why they were called Oathbreakers.
Mm-hmm. While we're talking about it, who are the Oathbreakers? One more time.
The Aiel that we know are Oathbreakers.
Okay. Gotcha.
Yes. At this
Moraine's
point, they're known as
also
Aiel. Also true. At this
That's
point,
what I was thinking of. And
they are the Aiel still at this point, but they're still in that like way of the Leaf Aiel, the Deshine Aiel. They haven't yet made their branch off yet. This is one branch coming off into the Tinkers and the Tuathawan, the colorful people that we met in season 1 that still follow the way of the Leaf, but they kind of abandoned that level of responsibility of shepherding all of the things that the Aes Sedai gave them. They have no concept that that was their past anymore.
Yeah, I am also taking it that anyone that didn't go through RHUIDEAN has no idea that any Aiel that didn't go through RHUIDEAN has no idea that they are Oathbreakers. It's only the ones that go through RHUIDEAN understand that the Aiel are Oathbreakers, and most of the Aiel are running around thinking that Moraine's uncle / that part of the world are all Oathbreakers. We're good, but when in reality they are actually Oathbreakers as well.
Which is part of the reason that the Tinkers don't remember the song, because they never get to see the history of their past. So when they're splitting here, which in context of the map, lost. Dave, like we're talking west of the spine of the world, so west of the mountain range, they haven't crossed over to the desert. They never leave. But then Rand's ancestor crosses, and then they eventually learn the path. Yeah. So I think we're kind of there. Other questions before I make a final comment from either you two, Paul or Dave?
No, you're good.
Oh, yeah. Not a question, but I hinted at it earlier. I like how Jonai is speaking, what we have come to be familiar with in their language, and he throws in an old tongue, we bury our dead and go on. So that you see the language dying out. So it just makes it so much better when you look at Matt now, be like, oh, like you're speaking like an ancient language. Like I thought it was an old language. I didn't know it was like so far back. So it's just put more weight on that.
Exactly, man. That's why it's tough for us to convey how much we can appreciate this without sounding pretentious about it. But like, there's so much baggage with what this clears up for the future and providing context for the series that's why I'm sitting here saying it's like one of my favorite episodes of TV I've seen in a really long time for that reason. But just like Dave said off the rip, when you guys finish the series, eventually you'll be able to go back and see this episode and realize that it's described as a turning point in the series for both probably the books and what early reviews are saying about Wheel of Time as a show, saying like this might be the moment that it starts to really break into the mainstream because it's taking that next level in quality and cinematography and storytelling. And I'm just so happy with this. Like this conversation we're doing right now is just making me so freaking happy.
One more question for you then. I just remembered. Did Jonai say that he had a daughter that was a seer?
That is an interesting thing because he is shown as having like a male lover in the
Yeah.
the vision we just talked about, where they're actually getting the marching orders from the Aes Sedai, they're getting all of their, I don't want contraband, let's call it, and they're just shepherding it away to safety. And then he talks about he has like daughter, a son, he has children because he has a grandchildren. I don't know exactly what the connection is there, but that is straight out of the books, and that Jonai has a daughter. It's actually technically a wife, but he is driven by this relative of his that had a dream of the future, that like everything will be okay, essentially. And that's why he also has that mantra where it's like all will be well, all will be well, because the vision slash dream that in the show his daughter, in the books his wife had, was basically a time so far in the future where everything was chilling, like everything was settled again and it was okay. So that's why he is able to kind of just move forward and just be like, everything will be okay. Like, we'll follow the way of the leaf. It'll all work out because like we had that dream of the future and we know it will come to fruition. Does he know that? He obviously believes that.
And he clearly had to have a kid at some level if he was going to be Rand's ancestor. And I like to just think that because it's just such an advanced society, they're all progressive and there's no labels. Everybody love everybody, whatever you got to do. So that could be headcanon. If we're done with this vision, I just want to make a comment about like the flashing back and forth between the real world, because this is the point where the other Aiel that was in there that Rand went in after didn't make it to this vision, meaning he started clawing his eyes out and dying in the glass columns before Rand gets past it at this point. So I don't know what that actually says about like the level of power, or like how rare this knowledge is from everything we've talked to up to this point, because most people don't make it that far. So just keep that in the back of your head. Most people you saw were even dying before the next vision we're about to talk about. So just the glass columns, just super cool, super iconic in the fantasy community. Just something to be on the lookout for.
Okay. So to avoid being repetitive, but I'm going to be repetitive. So we've started with Charn, and we've seen Lanfear drilling the hole in the pattern that allows the Dark One to have influence over the world. We've then moved into the men have gone mad because Luce, Theron, Telamon, the previous dragon, sealed the Dark One away. The Dark One's taint hit the world. Men went crazy. So the Aes Sedai gave Jonai these saplings and the Sa'angreal to protect. We just witnessed the origins of the Tinkers, the Tuathawan, the colorful people from season 1 who said, I'm tired of this, Grandpa. I don't want to carry these trees. I don't want to carry these Sangreal. Let's just go sing songs together. So now we move into what is the maybe third vision.
Third. Yep.
So this is Lewin is our character. So this is where we kind of get the first time that someone breaks essentially the way of the leaf. So this is where the Aiel break the way of the leaf for the first time. So this is the origins of the split between the way of the leaf Aiel and the Aiel that we know that carry the spears and kill and have no problem doing so. So this is probably, let's say, this is one of the most important visions. This is like the realization that, like Luke mentioned, breaks a lot of the Aiel people. They don't make it past this one because it's so incongruent with their identities.
This was so cool. You go ahead, Paul. I just wanted to squeeze that. This is so cool in there. I love this flashback.
Well, the best part is the very end when you learn that the Aiel cover their face because it initially came from hiding your face because you broke your oaths, and that just tradition being passed on is so cool because in the beginning of this episode, Ruark, sees a shadow, tosses it up real quick. Like, yeah, I don't go around strangers showing my face. So just incredible. Okay, so that part was incredible. My biggest gripe of the whole episode, and it's not a gripe saying it's bad writing, it's gripe saying I hate this character. Lewin gets back after saving his sister, and his sister immediately throws him under the bus and is like, he killed him so bad. And I'm like,
I knew you were gonna say that.
He just literally risked everything to save you, like went out against like you should be dead basically, and instead of saying thanks, she could not wait to rat on him, and it really pissed me off. So, and I know like you can look at it as, oh, well, if she didn't tattle, then, the Aiel would have never separated fully. And so really she should be, praised. And there might be an Aes Sedai that looks at, oh, we heard about you in the prophecy. You're the tattler. Like, we need you to like rat your brother out. Like, it's just, I guess you could look at it this way, but take all that away. In this moment, she sucks. She's the worst. And a
Love the
little,
aggression.
a little preview potentially into my LVP. If you want to group do it, we can group vote that she's the LVP, because that just, oh God, got me riled up.
Dave, make your comment about the beginning, about the initial flash into this.
It's so obvious that we're seeing kind of iterations of Matt and Perrin here, which I thought was like really cool. And just the wheel doing what it does, just the similarities between this friend group, and it just feels like their friendship. I don't know if that's actually, parent. That's definitely obviously not a parent ancestor. It's not a Matt ancestor, but it's cool that their friendship kind of, holds up throughout the test of time here. And it's just a good group of guys, and just reminds me of our little group here at Bingetown TV.
Okay. I call Lewin.
Maester Lewin Rand.
Also Lewin
definitely
reminds
one of the
me
best.
of Luz Theron. They just combine the names, and it's just like coincidentally, all just the wheel.
Wow.
I'm just to say it, the wheel, as always, doing things.
This was one of my favorite visions too. It might have, besides the last one, just because of how important the last one was. I really love this one. It matched so much of what I remembered from this book, from the books, and like his hair. They tried to do something different with him without having to throw a bunch of makeup on him. But yeah, man, Paul, I had a lot of the same thoughts that you did, man. A better man than me, Lewin is, because I would have thought about murdering some family members right there, because Jesus Christ. But he does have the awesome, I don't know, path forward that he sets for himself, where instead of holding a grudge against them, he understands that he lived that life. And he says, what we're going to do now with him and Matt, if we want to call him that, he says, we can fight and we're going to protect them. So I really like that idea, because then you can kind of project forward that the idea that the only way it was possible for them to to get to RHUIDEAN, they kind of needed somebody like that to really be there to protect them. Otherwise, they would have just been, I just think would have probably been easy pickings. But I also don't know how canon it is that they actually worked as like distant bodyguards. But that's the kind of the vibe that he gave me. Yeah.
It's 100% canon. That's actually a good segue into like a little bit of a book difference here. So in the book, we get more visions. So we get a little bit more, let's say it's both before this, because Rand experiences it before this, but technically chronologically after this, where we understand more of like this offshoot. But yeah, I mean, this vision essentially is the origin of the Aiel that we know as the Aiel, that the world now knows as the Aiel. It's also the origins of the veil, like Paul said. I mean, I love the quote, because they pulled this straight out of the books of, who are you that calls me mother? Hide your face from me, stranger. I had a son once with a face like that. I don't want to see it on a killer. And again, pulled straight out of the books. I got chills when she drops that line the first time I watched this episode. And then we also are getting the origins of the spear wielding and the sword hating. So he kind of gives us the reason why the spear is okay, while the sword isn't. Avienda, I believe, also mentions this in potentially season 2, and that the sword is essentially also a weapon that can give life. You can hunt with the sword. It can put food in the pot, is the way that they say it.
Spear.
So, swap.
Oh, I'm so sorry. Yes, the spear. Jeez. I have toe. I clearly have toe. But yeah, so this is just like we've mentioned too. This is a big turning point vision. This is where we're getting, okay, wow, we're no longer pacifists. We are people that are willing to kill, but at this point, we're willing to kill to protect the pacifists that we love.
Mm-hmm.
So this is in the book parlance, and it might be easier to maybe think of it this way, in that this is where the pacifists, so aka the OG Aiel, start to lose the term Aiel, and where the fighters start to become more of the actual Aiel. So the people that are the pacifists, they move on from this, and they become known as the Gen Aiel. Gen in the old tongue means true Aiel, because they're true to their oaths, they're true to the way of the leaf.
The ones
they
that,
are
like
not,
the one that the mother was a part of that banished her son.
Yes.
Okay.
People that are
Gen
still
Aiel.
committed to nonviolence and to shepherding the saplings and the Sa'angreal. Our
Because these
true
ones cross
Aiel.
the spine, right? Already at this
Yes.
point. Yeah.
Yes. Yeah. All right. And did you notice who the grandfather was?
Was that the grandson, like Arden or whatever?
Yes, it
Jonah?
was. It was the little boy from when Jonai is old and we get the Tuathawan split. So he has the same little cap, the little
See, these
name.
are things that I didn't catch even 2 times watching, but because we're now covering them in chronological order, it makes so much sense that because they're dropping the names, and we kind of talked about this in our text before the podcast, but subtitles really not helping it.
Yeah.
The lack of subtitles really hurting us specifically in this episode. So hearing the names, I couldn't really tell if they were saying the same name or if it was just like a variation of a different, like that kind of name. It was so hard to hear, but I'm glad
And
we
he could catch a fist to the face too, man. This guy deserves it.
Yeah, his
Yeah.
answer is literally just we bury our dead and we move on. But he learned that from Jonai, who learned that from
Mhm.
Latra Sedai. So they're staying true to the oaths at this point. They are. Okay. What's that? Time for another recap. So Lanfear drilled the bore and let the Dark One hit the world. Men started to break the world. So the Aes Sedai gave the Gen Aiel, the true Aiel, let's say, this mission to protect these very valuable things. The mission then gets too tough for some people. So those people who we know as the Tinkers, the colorful people from season 1, throw their oaths to the side and say, we want comfort. So they break away. And now we have the people that didn't break away, that stayed true, the Gen Aiel. But some people broke away again. The oaths were too much for them, and they now take it upon themselves to be violent in respect of the cause to protect their loved ones who are the Gen Aiel, who are pacifists, who are keeping the oath, who are shepherding the saplings and the Sakarnan to RHUIDEAN. That will move us into what is the second vision, which is Rand's ancestor Mandian. So this is, we mentioned it earlier, the first time a spear gets put into the sand outside of RHUIDEAN. This is the origin of the glass columns. This is kind of where we get the reason why the trial of RHUIDEAN is a thing. This is also where we get the knowledge that the Gen Aiel completed their task. So they stayed true to the nonviolence. They stayed true to the oath that they would shepherd the tree of life, the Avendasaurus sapling, and the Sarkarnan across the Dragon Wall and into the Aiel Waste for safekeeping for the future, so that all of this stuff can happen. So you can call them pussies, you can say they got punchable faces, you can call them tattletales or narcs, but at the end of the day, job got done.
Yeah. Yeah, I know. Like that's what I was saying with the sister. Like it was good for the wheel, I guess, but in that moment, like you're a piece. So for this one, I was a little confused. Did she use the Sarkarnan to create the trials?
Mhm.
Okay, cool. That was a question because I know some Sa'angreal, like especially the one in season 1, I feel like a lot of them have a certain purpose and you can't just use them as like a source of power.
Mhm.
Okay.
So
Tear Angreal are the sporks that have multiple uses.
Yes.
While Sa'angreal are the forks that only have one specific use, which is a pure conduit of the power, just increasing your ceiling of what you can do.
and the fun extra piece is the third type is Angreal, which are just weaker versions of that. So,
Okay.
but this is
Mini-
important to
mini
know
fork.
that yeah,
salad
exactly.
fork.
A mini,
Yeah,
a mini
yeah.
fork. So
toothpick,
it's
maybe?
it's important to know like the Aes Sedai here, the same one we saw in the earlier vision, right?
Correct.
She is incredibly powerful, but even being that level of power, she would never have been able to create something like at this scale without that Sa'angreal. Like it's just really to show you how we've been saying that's the second or first most powerful Sa'angreal on the entire planet. So just keep that in the back of your head. That's why it's like it's such a big deal that she can make these columns like this and set these trials up. Not any random Aes Sedai can just get a random Angreal and do something at this scale.
Something else to notice about this Aes Sedai is she does have on that sling ring looking item that we haven't learned about, but we've seen Ishii had it. I think Ishii had it at one point, maybe in the finale. I think Luce Theron had it in the flashback where he was caging Ishii initially, and we haven't seen it since. So I want to say it's like a lost tool that they can use, that channelers can use. I guess we'll see if we even get it going forward. But just another note that they keep dropping these little images here and there.
So in the show parlance, because this is slightly different than the books, this woman, this old Aes Sedai, essentially called the most legendary shot ever, in where she hands the Sarkharnan to Jonai, entrusts him and all of his generations to carry it across the broken world, across the mountains, and then build the city of RHUIDEAN so that she can show up wizened to all hell and create this trial, which eventually will create this culture that the Aiel are aware of their past. They understand what they need to do. Their role in the dragon being reborn is to eventually have him come through and then kind of be the people of the dragon once again. And that is different than the books. It's different multiple people that do those things, but I think it works way better in the show that it's just one person. It's just way easier to make that connection of that's why this was all done, essentially.
I think it's interesting that she tells all those people to, basically, create a city, but the city has no inhabitants. It's just fog and magical powers, essentially. I don't know if that's supposed to be. It's just like they kind of live outside of it more so than actually in RHUIDEAN. Like no one lives in RHUIDEAN is how I took it.
Okay, that's actually a great question. That's going to highlight kind of how we've moved from Lewin in the last division where he kills for the first time and to where we are now. So
I guess
this division, yes, this vision highlights that split where the Gen Aiel, who were the Oath Keepers, they've never wavered. They took all of the stuff and they built the city of RHUIDEAN. So they and the Aes Sedai together, because the Aes Sedai said, okay, you are the real ones, the OGs. They kept the oath. So like, we can work with you. We accept you. So they built that city together and the Gen Aiel lived in the city. But the Oathbreaker Aiel, who picked up the spear, who followed Lewin and created that society that was working almost in parallel with the Gen, who were willing to fight, who were willing to protect, that obviously over time have then created multiple clans that kind of fight between themselves. They lost all concept of the oath that they forsook beforehand.
Oath that they forsook.
Now, how are all the true Aiel dead? Because she says that in this flashback that she pulls the Sedai pulls the sphere from the tree and she tells the Aiel that are there, the last people who were truly Aiel are all dead now.
Wouldn't you like to know whether boy?
Okay.
I don't remember the answer, so someone will be able to help us out.
Immediately out on the second watch was like, okay, so Jonai and his young son were the only two true Aiel, I guess, left. But obviously you got to procreate, so they're banging people that aren't Aiel. And that's where the true Aiel kind of gets lost, is that the bloodline. But I'm sure there were probably others that joined Jonai, I guess. But it was weird to see only two of them. And then all of a sudden now we have a whole entire actual filled clan of Gen Aiel.
Well, I think two things there. My remembrance, and I could be way off base here, is that the city is built like that, but I don't think it's like fully inhabited with all Gen Aiel. I think it's more built as this like monument and like large space. But the second part, I think my answer to be my guess of why there's no Gen Aiel left is that way of life is
not habitable,
just kind of died out. There's just not enough people that have agreed with it. Again, in the books, one of the visions we get is more people defecting out of the Gen into what we know as the Aiel and the fighters, because things keep happening to them. So we get one vision essentially where a woman and like a couple people come to the Aiel. They actually come to Lewin. He's really old at this point. So the vision is through Lewin's son. And they basically meet these Gen, and the Gen are like, hey, we just got fucked over in this deal and they stole like our children. We need your help, essentially.
Okay. And
they say to them, we'll help, but if you like come with us, then you have to leave the Gen behind. You have to become one of us. Okay. And couple people do, and the one woman who's like kind of the main character, let's say, it basically says like, fine, like that's fine, like I have nothing left in my life, basically. And then they ask her, what about your husband? And she grabs a spear and says, this is my husband now. So she was the first maiden of the spear. But that kind of vision shows you that over time and living and in the waste and getting tired of taking advantage of, they're just the gen takes a lot of, let's say, belief to stay in the gen, to keep up with that way of life. And the further you get away from the oath, you know, you're being told the oath from your dad who heard from his dad from thousands of years ago. And it's like, fuck that shit. Like, we're dying. We're getting taken advantage of. Like, give me a fucking spear at this point is essentially what's happened over the years. And that people have kind of just bled out of the Gen Aiel into the Aiel clans that we know.
Got it. Okay.
I'm having a hard time just wrapping my head around that this Aes Sedai is the same one, because I'm trying to like count the generations and like I know Aes Sedai can live long. I made a note. I was like, oh, I guess it's like ancestor of the same Aes Sedai because it has the same necklace and stones, colorful stones. Like nowhere was I even close to putting it together as the same person.
We don't know the rules yet about what the show is going to do about that, because it is kind of talked about in the books. And you can also in parallel with this think about like the Forsaken who lived thousands of years with no issue, but that's a whole separate issue. I do agree with what you're saying, that it's that is the risk that they took with keeping this the same character, but they could also change the lore in this version of Wheel Time where you can live hundreds to thousands of years if you're powerful enough, and she's one of the most powerful Aes Sedai ever, probably. So
yeah, and I mean,
I don't
Lanfear
know
has been around for 3,000 years and hasn't aged a day versus Latra, who was around 3,000 plus years ago. We get to this point, which is X amount of years ago, and then she's old as dirt.
Will said the Forsaken part of the gift of why you come to the dark is eternal life.
Right.
So that is being, I was gonna say bankrolled essentially by the Dark One, while Latra, who is this woman, doesn't have the benefit of that. I agree, though. It really was just a risk that they took, whether it's, can we make this make a little more sense and have connections versus does it make a ton of sense for her to be alive?
Yeah.
I'm kind of excited because is it recap time?
It is recap time. So we've started. We have Lanfear drills a hole in the pattern trying to access the true power, which then lets the Dark One impact the world. We move however many years into the future, and the world is being broken because men are now going mad due to the Dark One's taint. The Gen Aiel, we're just going to call them at this time, the true Aiel, the OGs, are given a task to shepherd very valuable things to RHUIDEAN, essentially. Some people flake off in this next vision. They're tired of this grandpa. They just want to sing songs. You can't blame them. They start to wear colorful colors. We know them. We then follow the people that stayed true. They're staying true. The true Aiel, the Gen Aiel. Someone picks up a spear and kills someone. So now we have another splintering. So we have the Aiel that we know now become the spear wielders. And we have the Gen Aiel who, frustratingly for us, stay on the path of nonviolence and the way of the leaf. And now we've just discussed the way more kind of in the future, what is the result of that, of this splitting into two that the Aiel have done. The true Aiel have accomplished their goal of shepherding all of these materials, creating the city of RHUIDEAN, but they're died out at this point because it's not in vogue to be nonviolent, because the other side of the Aiel, the warriors, the spear wielders, that's the cool way to be. But they're so cool, they've had so much fun that they forgot their history. So that's why Latra Sedai has created the Trial of RHUIDEAN so that they can remember their place in history and in the world. And that will take us to our final vision, the closest to the present time with the first one that Rand experiences. This is a show-only creation, but it nailed it. Janduin, Rand al'Thor's father, on the slopes of Dragon Mount. Sheesh. Emotional. In one word, let's say.
No surprise that, of course, he would be the one that kills Moraine's uncle. I mean, like how Moraine says, fate is very interesting. It can appear when it doesn't seem like it's there, and it's just Rand's father is definitely a beast. I hope we get more of him. I imagine we will, even though it feels like right now we don't need too much more about him. He's done his civic duty. He produced the Dragon Reborn.
Yeah.
Yeah,
His pattern
and,
duty. Yep.
yeah, and but it is
See
really
that
cool
dual
to see
wielding
that.
spears. That was cool.
Yeah, the action scenes are all really great too, and to follow up on that badass scene that we got from, I think it was season 2, episode 7. I guess it's the follow up to, Rand's mom kicking ass while pregnant and giving birth. Just that was already such a great scene. I'm glad we got a little bit of an extended version to see the father's reaction and his part in all this. It's just really cool.
Yep.
Yeah, not a whole bunch. Like really sad. Like you said, like I didn't know this was Rand's actor either. Like this was the first flashback. The
Wait,
makeup was
was
so, dude.
I get
They all
that
were.
is insane.
Yeah.
You can't be serious, Dave.
I
Is that
can't,
really
I didn't piece it. I didn't piece it together.
Every main character in every flashback was Rand's actor.
I got 4 of 6 of them because those 4 of the 6 were very obvious. I
So they were
didn't
like,
get
oh.
Jonai.
On the
I
other
didn't get
two, yeah.
Jonai. I didn't get this one. Nope. That's insane.
It's so funny. So it literally looked so good. It looked like a complete individual. The only way I was a little confused when he talked, you could kind of hear it in his voice, but he did a phenomenal job, especially when they say, no sign of the baby anywhere, and he breaks down. Plus, the fighting was badass. So great first flashback. It was, a little info dump, nothing too heavy. It was just, us dipping the toe.
This was consumable at first. Yeah, this
Yeah.
was easy to follow. And then we hit the next one. It's like, where the fuck are we going?
Yeah.
Kyle, you did a fantastic job of taking us through that. I learned a ton there that I definitely need some
That
recaps for.
Jonai and this guy were the same, all the same as the other. That's what I learned. That was my big takeaway from this podcast. Nothing else.
No, but seriously, that I know we're probably done talking about all the Rand stuff. We're going to move into the Marine things and get out of here, but that was phenomenal. And I hope you two can appreciate it a little bit more now, having some of the questions answered, because a lot of the stuff that we learned here is the groundwork for everything to do with just the Dragon Reborn's past and Rand's future. So I think the show did amazing. It's going to be so hard for them to come out with an episode that I like better than this for a decent amount of time, because I have seriously went to bed thinking about this episode like every night since I've watched it. So great job recapping. You should get a PhD in wheel time, Lord Kyle.
Yeah, I'm sure there's people on the internet that would refute that, but I hope it feels like, it feels like
layman PhD.
Yeah, working the way we did made the most sense. I hope it worked out instead of following it in the way that the show did. It seems like it did, so that's very good. I will say one thing that we talked about off pod, and we kind of somewhat cleared it up ourselves, but just if Paul, I'm not sure how involved in that conversation you were, if people listening are, of like, does everyone see the same thing when they go through the columns? And the answer to that is no, because it is based off of your blood. One part of this could be that Rand was destined to be the Dragon Reborn, so naturally his ancestors are involved in very pivotal things. But I think no matter what, you're always going to see visions of your ancestors being involved at some level to learn the truth of what is happening over time. So everyone comes away essentially with the same level of information. I think if you make it through the trials, you're kind of leaving with those highlighted thoughts that we've been running through in our very successful recap sections of, you're getting the bullet points of what has happened. You're obviously getting them through somewhat different eyes, but you're getting basically the fact that the Aiel that you are, if the perspective of, let's say, Rhuarc leaves knowing that his Aiel clans broke off from the Gen Aiel clans, who broke off from the Dai Shine Aiel, who also became the Tinkers, and it also just gives them all of that information. So I will say this is one of the best reading experiences I've ever had in my life. When I first read these chapters in the books, it was like, holy shit, like this is so crazy, and it just broke the world open like so much, and getting all of that timeline epicness and the land fear of it all, and the Tuathuan, and just all of it was like, this is so crazy that all of these things are so connected and in such believable ways. It was just like the coolest thing ever. So I'm glad that the show captured it, I think, very, very well.
Agreed.
All right. Oh, and one thing too, this is so stupid to call this out, but again, going on that point of like everyone who goes to the columns has ancestors that went through those things, and that in the second one, when Mandian is about to go in and his wife basically says, like, we all saw in the dream that like you have to say yes to what they do. So all of the people that said yes end up living and creating ancestors who can then go through the trials
Descendants.
in the future. Yes, if that makes any sense. And if you were confused and we confused you, sorry about that.
Just listen to this podcast again. Maybe you'll get it.
Yeah, rewind. There's a couple recaps about 15, 20 minutes ago that I think it'll make a lot more sense. And if you have questions, ask us. I'm sure either us, people in the Discord, or people in the comment section will be able to answer them. Okay. So that's going to move us off of Rand and into Moraine. So we kind of have Rand. He gets out of the columns, sees Avienda, says, I ain't leaving without Mo. And this is kind of what Mo's been up to. So Mo's in the Three Rings. Sheesh.
She took
She's
the
seen a lot.
Sangreal before this, but yes,
Yes,
that is
yes.
the cue up to this. And
Yeah. Which she used green weaves too. And Luke, I just know that you hinted on it. I think episode 2 of this season, you were just like, the fact that they're leaning into the different colors. I know it's so much harder to choose and produce basically what like make those decisions, but it just adds so much. So really love it. And at first we didn't know what the hell this was. I was like, oh, like Moraine's just pocketed in this little pearl, and you know, no big deal. Finds out it's like one of the most important pieces of history. So I was like, oh, in the beginning, it's nothing. And I thought the rings looked fantastic because I heard the trial of the 3 rings, or there will be 3 rings, go through one of them, and I'm like, this literally sounds exactly like the arches, you know, different once you get in there kind of, but also showing your future. So I was like, whatever. But when you see it, you're like, wow, this is really cool. So I enjoy how they portrayed it, and then just floating in like suspension. It was a good visual.
mm-hmm.
In terms of taking the Sangreal, I don't know what the reaction will be when the Aiel find out that she takes it. It could be, okay, you know, she's bringing the Sangreal, you know, to the Dragon Reborn, great. Or it's, hey, that's our precious artifact. What the hell do you think you're doing, stealing this from our Tree of Life? This is like our culture, part of our lives. You're not meant to have it. I'm curious to see what the backlash will be. When she took it, I was immediately like, Moraine's setting herself up for an easy LVP. I don't think she's supposed to be touching that. But with the knowledge of what it is, kind of fits in a little bit better, makes a little bit more sense why she would take it and why she would know what it looks like, because she has talked about it with, no, she didn't talk about it with Lanfear, but.
No, I will say that is actually something that Luke and I also are unaware of. So this is a huge lore change in that in the show, the Sarkarnan is the woman version of Kalendor. So it's the woman's access to a Sangreal. That's the most powerful one. Kalendor, we know, is the sword. That's the male version of that. In the books, they are both male Sangreal. Okay. So it's going to be really interesting to see what the ripple effects are of the women having access to something at this level. And then again, like you're saying, how much ownership to the Aiel feel over it? How is Moraine going to use it? Will she keep it? Will she give it? So that's going to be something to watch for all of us as we move forward.
No, I'm thinking about it. Does she even know what that is? Has she talked about this powerful Sangreal, or was it only Lanfear and Rand that have discussed this Sangreal in particular?
I would say we haven't on screen seen it. It also feels like it might be likely that it could be lost knowledge to the tower at this point. So again, that could be something that's interesting to watch.
I'll also counter with that by saying, if Latris Sedai was, I guess, considered an Amelin back in the day, I don't know if she was, but I guess that information, if she passed that down to Amelin, Swan knows about this Sangreal. Swan and Moraine obviously talk a lot of pillow talk often, and this could have made its way to Moraine's ears, but I'm not 100% sure if Moraine knows what she's taken. And my second comment on all this is, yeah, I mean, obviously the different spins were just fucking insane. I mean,
Yeah.
so many cool moments. I could sit here and list all of them if I wanted to, but for me, the big one that I'll just take away is that a lot of these scenarios end up with Lanfear killing Moraine, and I won't be surprised if come time when destiny needs to be fulfilled in season 10, 11, 12, if Moraine is put in one of these situations where she's faced 1-to-1 with Lanfear. The one that was very prevalent was the one where she's in the desert with Lanfear. So I think that scene will come back, and maybe because she has this knowledge of all these different spins and will stick to her gut that she can never trust Lanfear, she'll be a little prepared to avoid the death situation. But I do foresee Moraine probably getting in a standoff 1-to-1 with Lanfear in like a situation like this. After Egwene maybe, has had her way with Lanfear.
Yeah,
yeah.
Well, okay, you can't tease us with
Okay, no.
halfway
All right,
until
we'll
they'll
go.
have a confrontation. We need a
This will
result.
be the final straw that breaks the camel's back that'll set up the Lanfear and Egwene battle. How about that? I think Moraine and Lanfear will have their showdown. That'll set up the playing field for Moraine and Egwene and Lanfear to so many
Not
Ains.
specific enough. How do you mean it's going to set up the battlefield for that? Is Lanfear going to kill Moraine, which is going to set Egwene off? Is that what you mean by that?
Like, it'll be a fake out death, but she'll kill Moraine. Egwene's going to get super pissed, and it's like, all right, Super Saiyan time.
Okay.
Let's go.
Okay.
Yeah, I want to rattle off some of them just because they were so crazy. Like, you have Moraine weaving the nets, like where Swan grew up, saying, "What's wrong, love?" We get Moraine and Egwene killing Rand in the tower, and I love a lot of these. Rand is in his red coat, which he is portrayed in a lot.
Yes,
it's so
sir.
cool looking. Moraine releasing Lan from the bond, and then Rand accepts the bond the next scene, and then Lan on fire, and Moraine puts him out, but then there's like giggling in the background, and it turns upside down, but it was Lanfear. It looked like Lanfear with the slick back. Could have been a male channeler, but I think it was Lanfear. Moraine holding Rand, who was stabbed, and she's crying over his body, and then the next scene, Moraine is killing Rand in the desert, and then she's banging Rand, and then she's banging Lanfear, and then Lanfear's choking her, and then it was the constant Lanfear. It was different types of killing, I guess, but it always ended up with Moraine at least getting some type of damage to the throat. Like, it would either be strangling, or it would be like slicing the throat, or it'd be like stabbing the stomach and then slicing the throat. So
was
the fact that
using the Heron Mark sword too in some of those scenes? I couldn't tell. It looked like a katana, and I thought it was the Heron Mark blade for a second.
That would be fucking disgusting if she somehow gets Lan's sword and kills Moraine.
No, that one would be. Or I guess the Heron Mark blade is Rand's, but yes, it also looked. I couldn't tell. It was so fast, but it looked like a katana of some sort. So it could have also been, Lan's katana that she gets a hold of and just uses to flip it on Moraine.
That one appeared so much. So you want to say that's like,
is that it could have been the family sword too, or whatever. And it's like, oh my god, the one
it
that
seems like a bigger possibility in the future for that one, at least. But then there's like other small ones where Moraine is bowing to Rand in like the two rivers, like completely different areas. So I don't want to put too much weight on one or the other, but the reoccurrence of just Lanfear killing Moraine over and over again makes you think that is a high possibility coming in the future.
I also love the iteration where it's the first time we kind of see Lanfear kill Moraine, but it's the Emmonsfield 5 and Elaine.
They're in the ways, and they're all in black.
And they're like all wearing black. That was hot. That was fucking hot.
That was definitely the coolest vision, I think, of the entire thing. But this was pure dopamine the entire time. They knew they didn't have the screen time to flesh any of these out, so they did it in the coolest way possible. Just
the rotations.
And it's literally visualized like the wheel. We were told she's going to see 1,000 thousands, which is 1,000,000 different possible futures. That's amazing, and I love that you guys called out the jackets. Kyle, can you turn around and grab like book 3 or 4 and get a cover going for us right here?
This is going to convince the podcast listeners to get to the YouTube channel.
Show us one of those covers.
This is how you know they're well read, because they get stuck in the box because they're bigger than they were when they put them in there, because the spines are so broken in. Let me put myself on mute very quickly and struggle loudly off.
Brandon didn't have any long hair though in any of these features, did he?
That's a
think
good
he
He had
question.
long hair.
Yeah,
I don't think so off the top of my head, but that's a
I was trying to
great
relate
call-out.
it. I was trying to relate it to Egwene's when she was in the
Mhm.
Arches, but
I
I think
don't-
other than the coat, there wasn't too much.
I mean, while Kyle's still struggling, I will say the one that you called out to, the very first spin of the wheel that Moraine sees is when she's, in Swan's hometown and she says, "What's wrong, my love?" But we don't see the figure. It's not, I don't think it's Swan. It's like a very dark silhouette. And I don't know if we're supposed to
Yeah.
imply that it's Lanfear or if
It's
it's someone we
hooded.
haven't met yet. But
It's hooded and it seems like a woman's silhouette in clothing. But you're right, we don't see the face. So when she says "my dear," and it is Swan's home, but we don't actually see her face.
yeah,
so
I first thought it was Swan. And then, second watch through, I was like, okay, I guess it might be Lanfear if it plays out into the scenario of Lanfear and Moraine, kissing and then getting killed by Lanfear. But yeah, I don't know if that'll be a player that we haven't met yet or if it's someone else.
Oh, that's
I
my
only-
book falling. But here we go.
Red jacket. Yes, sir.
Hell yeah, dude. Hell
That's
yeah.
book
They knew what they
5.
were doing.
That's the fires of heaven
Spoilers.
right there.
Spoilers.
can't see the
Yeah.
dragons with those sleeves.
And
yeah, true.
truth be told, that one is not as read because this is when the audiobook journey began. So
Mm.
this right here is the book we're on right now, The Shadow Rising. See, look at that. Look at that wear and tear. You see that wear and tear? That's red.
Dude,
That means that was
spoilers.
red.
Now, I think
cover
I'm going to call you out. I think you just sat home one day and we're just like opening and closing it so fast. And we're just like, look at this breaking it in.
I knew this was going to happen at the podcast.
But that's it.
I
Dude,
Yeah, I was going
what
to say
incredible work.
I had thoughts, but I think we covered literally everything about those scenes. I will say though, in the books, we don't get any of this perspective. We know Moraine does this. We know she saw things. So I think this was a great example of how the adaptation can also bring something more to the story itself. Obviously, they need to cut things and change things because of the way that Amazon only gives them 8 hours of television per season to give us what they need to give us. But I think this was a great use of time, like Luke mentioned.
And I mean, I guess just to really close this out and put everything into perspective, they were in there for a week, probably 8 days, because it was kind of the next day after Lan and Egwene talk about it. So, and that's just a crazy amount of time to be sitting in there for Moraine to be seeing visions and dealing with this. And while Rand's going through the glass comms, just what a way to end it, man. And then like that, him walking out with Moraine in his arms, that kind of goes back to what I said earlier. At the end of the day, he still knows she's important and he needs her. So he'll put aside his frustration with her to save her. So I don't know what else needs to be said besides MVP, LVP, but this episode was a legitimate 10 out of 10 for me. And
Yeah.
I don't know how many more episodes of TV are going to hit this high.
It was that 8th day because, as they say, as Latra Sedai said in the second vision, as they have said before in the prophecies for the Aiel, the Karkarn will come from Ruidian at dawn.
On.
Yeah, he who comes with the dawn, the Karkarn, Randolph Thor, double dragoned up, dual wielding double barrels on the wrists.
Yeah,
He's the guy.
that was sick with the sunset in the background. I was pissed.
I believe
now
it was rising. As
rising
dawn
dawn
is. Yeah, I got
from
you.
dawn till dusk. Yeah, okay,
Yeah.
whatever. We'll leave that out. But I was
You're doing
pissed
so
at
well.
I was pissed at Avienda when this is Rand saying, "I'll wait for Moraine," and she's like, "As you wish, Wetlander." And I'm like, dude, you just fucking saw the dragons on his arms, and you're gonna call him Wetlander instead of like Karkarn or something else with a little bit more respect.
Right.
A little.
I actually had the
Her
same
way?
thought.
He went through the
I didn't
trial.
like
Well,
that line.
It was funny how initially it was like, well, you haven't earned it. You haven't been through the trial of Ruidian, and now he's gone through it, and it's like, you're still a Wetlander. It's still not
You're
enough.
still in it. You
for
haven't
her.
walked out yet, pussy. So
Yeah, true. You actually haven't left
This
yet.
is my last shot to call you Wetlander.
Before I think we get into MVP, LVP, I will just say that I mentioned one earlier, but there is 2 fairly big lore changes within this episode. There's one individual that's not present for a lot of the things that happen here. I don't think that that's really going to change their story 1,000,000%, but it will be interesting to see the way that they change that stuff. I'm pretty positive that every book reader is aware of what's going on there and maybe is feeling a little bit of trepidation about the way that they're changing it up and the way that the adaptation is going to realize what, to be frank, needs to happen that didn't happen in this episode. I think at this point, it feels wild to say it. It's only been 4 episodes, but they've totally won me over. I trust everything. If you asked me that's end of season 2, I'd have been like, I don't trust them at all. But it feels like now I trust them to make changes like this, at least in the sense of like, okay, I'm willing to see how is it actually going to realize itself, essentially, because this episode is a culmination of like so many things that have been laid through these first 2.5 seasons, and they're nailing that part of it. So they've earned that goodwill from me.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. MVP, LVP, we know Paul is last.
Yeah.
I went first last time, so I won't go first again. We can throw it to Luke. I don't believe you've gone first yet.
Okay, then I will say my MVP of the episode was Randall Thor for bossing those glass columns. He only hit the ground on the knee like once or twice. He crushed it. Yeah, I don't know what else is there to say because I actually don't have all the flashback vision characters written down. I'm going to take Rand, so we're going to stick with him for MVP. And then my LVP, I'm going to take Couladin because he's a little bitch. And I didn't like how he immediately tried to physically attack them after 5 seconds of meeting him. So Bear put him in his place. So Couladin's going to be my LVP.
Yeah, Dave.
I think there was a lot of contention for MVP this week. There were a lot of good characters that, had a lot of important roles that they succeeded in participating in, but I'm gonna give it to Lan. Obviously, gushed over him at the very beginning of the episode. He is daddy. We'll give it to Lan this episode. And for the LVP, I'm going to give it to Mirian Lanfear. I'm trying to say Mirian's to die.
Yeah,
because it's not Lanfear at the time, and I think she royally fucked up by doing whatever she did in that 6 vision flashback. So we'll give it to her.
Yeah, I will say too, to clarify, because I'm going next, in that she had good intentions at the time.
Yeah, I agree. Yes.
This was not motivated by the dark at that point.
And then in the 5th later. Flashback, she does open. Is that what
at that point? At that point, she has turned to the dark.
Yeah. So that's doubling down on the LVP.
Sorry, not to interrupt. I'm not going, Kyle. This is a question. So we are to assume that was accidental. For some reason, I had a little bit of inkling in my head that Mirian Sedai, like, because she had this love for Luce, was also trying to. I guess not. I guess
she saw it as like an open power source that we can give the power back, the true power to the people, and she kind of is coming off as like a curious person that found this opening, so she thought she was helping the world.
I guess in my head I have it that since she swore dark oaths to the Dark One, she knew she was going to do that before she released him. But that's accidental. That's just good to have in my head.
Yes, yeah. So I guess to add a little bit of lore too at this point. So we know Luz, Theron, Telamon. That's 3 names. We know Latra, Posey, Desum is, I think, so they all have 3 names. Getting that 3rd name back in the day was like you're a real one. You have to earn that 3rd name. At this point, she only had 2. So she wasn't on that. So my headcanon too is that she's trying to like make that scientific breakthrough to get that 3rd name. She's trying to make a name for herself. What better way to make a name for yourself than punching a hole in the pattern and achieving an unlimited energy source that anyone can use? Obviously, it goes wrong. The downwind of that as well is the Luce Theron heartbreak. Luce Theron goes with another woman. So she's lost the scientific breakthrough. She's lost her man. And it's like, okay, well, give me eternal life and amazing power, because what the hell else is there for me?
Yeah.
Is basically her storyline. Also, that big orb, that white orb that falls, that was like like part of a university, like a research facility, essentially. Yeah. I didn't want to bog that detail down at the time, but it got brought up. So I won't blame myself. Okay. MVP. I am going to take Charn. I'm going to take Charn, the ancestor from the last Vision in the show, the first Vision that we covered. He's buddy with Miriam Sedai, aka Lanfear. He's got a great work ethic. He just wants to be out there hoeing the field with his boys and his gals and singing the song. He knew the song. You got to put respect on the fact that he knew the song. Just seemed like a good guy. And my LVP is going to be whichever woman created the Tinkers. She didn't want to work hard. She wanted to go sing the songs. Well, look what happened. You guys lost the songs. So no positives came out of that for her. She broke her oath. She lost her song and can't respect that.
Yeah, MVP. Gonna go Jonai just because we saw him receive the Sangreal and then we saw him stick to his guns and not abandon and break his oath. So good for him. And then LVP, Lewin's sister. Like, just shut up, would you?
That was the
saved it
first
for
name
you.
I had written down.
Yeah, I
Thanks,
saved
guys.
it for you. I could have easily taken your LVP,
Appreciate it.
but I was a good
We
guy.
all did. Because we're all like Lewin, Charlin, and whoever the third Matt lookalike guy was.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, good, Dave.
Yeah, boys.
Okay. That was a lot to get through. I feel proud of us that we did it in under 2 minutes and 15 under 2 minutes, under 2 hours. That would have been
100 times listening speed, guys. Listen.
Oh shit! I forgot to hit record, guys.
Oh, my fucking
that is,
God.
this actually is not the longest episode we've ever done. So that is fantastic. I hope it made clear for everyone that was confused. We might have confused you further. We might have shed light on some things, but either way, like I said at the top, the best way to maybe clear those things up or to just talk to us about all of this is going to be commenting on YouTube or joining our Discord to chat about things. You can also reach out to us via Twitter, but that's just going to be a little bit slower to get to us. So the best way is just joining the Discord and going on YouTube. And I also mentioned at the top, didn't I, that if you liked it and you hadn't rated the podcast yet, that the perfect opportunity is now. 5 stars does a lot for us. And I assume if you're here at this point, you at least enjoyed the conversation. And we'll be back here every week. Thankfully, we have to do one of these at a time from now on. And yeah, at this point, words are coming out because I feel like I need to talk. But does anyone have anything they want to say before we really send it out of here?
Wheel of Time is S tier.
Oh, very interesting.
I've regretted it ever since I said it. I just want to put that into the ether.
You regret it taking it out of S tier. You mean?
Yes, at the beginning of the season. I don't know what the fuck I was thinking. So I'm sorry, Wheel of Time, you're an S tier show.
There you have it. Okay. Well, one of the last things I'll say before I get into my ending spiel is it's March Madness, baby. So good luck with all those brackets.
Go
I'm sure at
Gators.
this point, yeah, it's Tuesday. We're recording this, but you're listening to this on Thursday, Friday. It's the first or the second round of the tournament. So I hope those upsets are hitting. That champion is still alive. Unless, of course, I didn't pick those upsets or it's not my champion, then I hope your bracket burns in Shio Ghul. Okay, that is it for us here at Binge Empire. That's our coverage of Season 3, Episode 4 of The Wheel of Time. The road spear, something with a road and a spear. If you like what you heard, you can check out all the other podcasts that we have. We're covering a lot of shows at this point. So we are Binge Empire. The Bingetown TV network expands into a podcast called The Core, which is covering all things on Apple TV. So that'll be covering that Severance finale that I'm sure you also watched this week. Go to The Core to get that coverage. We have a podcast titled Dark and Twisted, because I know you're watching Yellow Jackets as well. Well, we're covering Yellow Jackets on Dark and Twisted. We're also covering White Lotus. Awesome episode this past week. We won't be covering that episode, but we'll put out an episode at the end of the season that you'll want to listen to. And then Final Form is the other podcast I'm going to direct you to. That is Bingetown TV's anime and animated television podcast. And I know you just watched the Invincible finale last week. Well, we covered the Invincible finale and the rest of that season and Solo Leveling on that podcast. So you've got a little homework. You got a whole nother week until the next Wheel of Time episode. So in that time, I'm expecting 5-star ratings. I'm expecting brackets to be busted. And I'm expecting everyone to go to The Core, Dark and Twisted, and Final Form. And for the final time this episode, we are Binge Empire. And thank you so much for listening.